The owner's manual that came with the original Corvette ZR-1 contained a warning, a real printed warning. It said, and I'm reading this directly, "A ZR-1 rounding a sharp bend might startle other motorists." And then, a few pages later, the sound of the LT5 engine under hard acceleration and full engine power could disturb other motorists and passers-by. That's not marketing copy. That's a manufacturer warning their own customers that the car might frighten people just by existing in traffic. And yet, this car, the most capable production Corvette ever built up to that point, was a commercial failure. That's the story we're telling today, the car itself. Before we get to the failure, you need to understand what this thing actually was. The ZR-1 was a fourth-generation Corvette, the C4, and the C4 itself almost didn't happen. The Corvette had never made money for General Motors. It was a marketing win, not a financial one. Through the 1970s, GM kept raising the C3's price, doubled it in 10 years, even accounting for inflation. In 1980 alone, they raised the Corvette sticker 4 separate times. People kept buying it. So GM, perhaps a little reluctantly, greenlit the first all-new Corvette in 2 decades. The C4 was legitimately advanced for its era. 5-link rear suspension, the most acute windshield angle of any production car at the time. Headlights that tumbled forward 162.5 degrees. The radiator was angled back 15 degrees, good for cooling, but it also minimized frontal cross-section for radar. A typical car showed up on a radar gun at 3,000 feet. The C4, 1,500. That design target made it into the official engineering documentation. That's the kind of thing that makes you proud to be an American car company. But the base C4 had problems. The interior was genuinely disappointing. The structure flexed more than it should have. And the engine, a Malaise-era small block, made numbers that were difficult to defend. Then the Acura and SX arrived, and Chevrolet had no choice. Building the LT5. The engineering path to the ZR-1's engine was not a straight line. Chevy first evaluated turbocharged V6s, then quickly determined that a V6 and a Corvette was a philosophical problem. Then they went to twin turbocharged small blocks, which were making over 400 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. They put GM's president at the time, Lloyd Rios, in one. He applied too much throttle. The car went off the road. Side note, his son Mark Rios, who later became GM's president himself, spun a C7 ZR-1 into a wall at the 2018 Detroit Grand Prix. Some lessons don't transfer between generations. None of that mattered anyway, because the twin-turbo V8 couldn't meet fuel economy standards, and GM didn't have a transmission that could absorb that kind of torque. What saved the program was Lotus. At the time, GM owned Lotus, and Lotus was developing a 4-cam, 32-valve V8 for a show car. GM asked them to adapt those heads to the small block. They tried. The result was too wide to fit through the C4's frame rails at the factory, because on the production line the engine went in from the bottom. So the Corvette team did something remarkable. They talked management into letting Lotus build an entirely new V8 from scratch. The engine shared no parts with the small block. It made 400 horsepower, 50% more power than the small block from the same displacement. Then came the bore spacing problem. Small block Chevys had always used 4.40-inch bore spacing. Lotus had designed the new engine at 4.5. Now bore spacing has no practical effect on how an engine feels or performs, but it wasn't traditional, so Lotus redesigned it. Smaller bore spacing meant smaller bores, smaller valves, and in the end, the engine made 375 horsepower instead of 400. But it did so without triggering a gas guzzler penalty. And so, the LT5 was born. Here's a question for the comments. Was that compromise worth it? Did Lotus give up too much chasing that bore spacing number? Or was hitting the fuel economy threshold the right call? The LT5 had 32 valves and 16 fuel injectors. But the injectors couldn't handle both idle fuel delivery and full load delivery at the same time. Lotus's solution was elegant. 2 smaller injectors per cylinder. At low revs, only half were active. At high revs, all 16 opened up. It was variable displacement fuel injection. Before that language was common, Lotus engineered the engine. Mercury Marine, a division of the Marine Engine Company, built it in a dedicated facility. Working in parallel, both teams cut development time roughly in half. 3 years from concept to production. 4 camshafts, 32 valves, 11 throttle bodies. Prior to the flat-plane crank Z06, it was the only Corvette ever built with more than one camshaft. What it could do. The ZR-1 was the quickest accelerating production car you could buy at the time. It was the fastest, with one exception, a 12-cylinder Ferrari. It posted the highest skid pad grip numbers ever recorded for a production car. Second best slalom results in the world. It was called the most capable handling production car on the planet by multiple publications. It decimated the Porsche 911 Turbo around a road course and cost half the money. It also had a second ignition key. Turn it one way, and the car ran in limited mode. Turn it the other way, full engine power. The manual warned you that the second mode might startle other drivers. They weren't being dramatic. What do you think of that dual key system? Genuine engineering solution, or the kind of feature that sounds better on paper than it works in practice? Let us know why it failed. With all of that, the ZR-1 was a marketplace failure. Here's why. The price was difficult to justify. When the ZR-1 launched, it cost significantly more than the base Corvette, and that gap widened as the base car's performance improved year over year. By the mid-1990s, the standard Corvette had gotten faster, more refined, and considerably cheaper relative to the ZR-1. The performance gap that had justified the premium was closing. The interior never matched the engineering ambition. The C4's cabin was already a known weak point, and the ZR-1 didn't correct it. You were paying supercar money for a car whose dashboard still felt like it came from a different decade. And visually, outside of the wider rear bodywork, which many buyers didn't even notice, the ZR-1 looked like a Corvette. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're paying a significant premium, you might want the person in the next lane to know it. The engine that made it special was also the thing that limited its production. Mercury Marine could only build so many LT5s per year. Low volume kept costs high and kept the car from reaching the buyers who might have appreciated it most. Here's the honest debate. Do you think the ZR-1 was priced correctly for what it was? Or did GM misread their own market? Drop your argument below. The ZR-1 ran from 1990 to 1995. Total production, around 6,900 units across 6 model years. By the numbers of the era, a quiet exit. But here's what the sales figures miss entirely. This car proved that American engineers could build a naturally aspirated production V8 that competed with the best Europe had on offer, and then go lap a 911 Turbo on its home ground for half the money. They built it in 3 years. They solved every problem thrown at them. Bore spicing politics, fuel economy standards, injector limitations, transmission constraints, and still delivered something that genuinely frightened other drivers just by existing in traffic. The ZR-1 wasn't built because the market demanded it. It was built because the engineers needed to prove something. And they did. Final question. If you had bought a ZR-1 in 1990 and kept it, what would you have today? A cherished piece of engineering history? Or the most expensive reminder that great cars don't always get their due? Tell us. Next time, the C5 Z06. The car that finally gave the ZR-1's ghost the commercial success it deserved.